This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
The law of attraction states that everything is energy and that like attracts like. True spirituality states that the only true reality is that of oneness, unity, and unconditional love and forgiveness. Together, these two are attached at the hip and perform a beautiful symbiotic dance together. Hi, I'm Carl Gruber, author of the brand new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. This is a book that will show you how to build a rock-solid personal foundation based on unchanging, eternal, universal truth that shows you how to become a consistent co-creator with the universe to create the life you love to live and live to love. Get your copy today of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, and learn how to manifest the life you truly desire to be living. Now available as an ebook or paperback on Amazon. Hey friends, welcome. This is World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment, and I'm your host, Carl Gruber. Now, in our 8th year of production, we're so glad you could join us on this journey of exploring all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening. On each show, we have the amazing opportunity to speak one-on-one with some of the world's greatest teachers, masters, and experts about all things that lay beyond our physical 3D world of form and density. So please share your favorite episodes of this show with all your friends and family, and tell them they can watch it on YouTube and New Reality TV. Plus, listen to it not only on Apple Podcasts, but most any audio-only online outlet. So with that, now let's meet today's guests. We are blessed to welcome to World Awakenings episode number 239, Victoria Shaw. Victoria is an intuitive counselor and spiritual coach with a doctoral degree in cognitive psychology. She came to a point, however, where she didn't quite know what she was missing from her life, but had a deep longing to be of service to the world, and that subtle knowing that there was something she was here to do. I think we all have that. And she needed to figure it out, exactly what it was. Then she discovered the world of intuitive and energy healing, and that's when everything changed, and she devoted the next few years to reawakening her intuitive gifts. Now today, she supports others in learning to leverage the power of their inner wisdom and live more intuitively guided lives. I love that. She is also the host of her own podcast, Intuitive Connection. So with that, hey, welcome, Victoria.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, you made it. Well, I'm excited to have you here because, I've been doing my research and everything that you do, and very, very cool stuff. And so let's just dive right into this. Like many of my guests who found a new life through enlightenment and awakening, you, evidently what I saw, you had a not-so-perfect childhood, went on to get your doctorate in psychology, raised a family, and yet you still felt unfulfilled. Can you fill us in on the details that led to you to where you're at now?
1,000%. So I think I've always been a highly spiritual person, and felt that deep spiritual connection, deep spiritual call, but I was raised in a family with sort of no spiritual upbringing, no religion, just the word spiritual would probably have been poo-pooed in my family. And so I didn't have any kind of framework to understand these things, right? But my family, especially my mother, was very, very, intellectual accomplishment was a big deal. And so, I think for the first, quarter of my life, I was really devoted to being as smart as I could be. And channeling. I had learning disabilities. I had attention, all sorts of diagnoses too. So it's kind of funny, but like I pushed through all of that stuff and really focused on achieving intellectually. But I always had like this deep connection, this deep sense of purpose. And I also always had, just this desire to like understand the world, like I think now how people reason, how they think, how they understand the world, like what's the meaning of life, like what is consciousness. These were questions that even at a young age like fascinated me. And so knowing only one road towards that, I pursued a PhD in psychology. I had been a psychology and philosophy major as an undergrad, and I went on and got my PhD in psychology. And when I got to the end of that journey, right, I realized like that I wasn't loving it anymore. Like my passion was gone. And I didn't really know why. But I knew that at the level I was at, I could not continue if I wasn't passionate about it. Right. Like it was, I had graduated from Princeton. I was doing my postdoc at Columbia. Right. So these are high powered places. And without that passion, I just did not have the motivation. So around that time, I had just gotten married and I said, I'm going to take some time off and I'm going to start my family. And then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. And that's when I did some writing too. I wrote the first 4 books. It was through that journey of parenting really that everything really opened up for me. And that was sort of my portal connecting back to my own true self, because I was struggling to be the kind of parent I wanted to be. A lot of times when we become parents, like I always say, there's 3 people in the room. There's you, there's your child, and then there's your inner child. And the inner child, like all of the stuff that you haven't resolved from your childhood will definitely come to play with you when you become a parent. And that's what happened for me. And I just wanted to be the best mom that I could be. And so I started looking for answers, and I started, becoming a real seeker so that I could be better, so that I could be there to support my kids. And I also had the blessings of being connected in New York City. Our pediatrician was completely out of the box and open to all sorts of things that I'd never even heard of, starting with like really basic things that weren't so basic to me, like acupuncture and cranial sacral therapy and energy healing, going all the way to like medical intuition. And so it opened this world to me and changed my life. And as I was working with all of these, wacko people, a couple of things that I was noticing in my life. Number one, it was helping. They were onto something. My life was getting better. They were helping me. They were helping my kids. This was really good stuff. And the other thing is they kept saying, this is what you need to do, right? Your intuition, that's the thing. You're super intuitive. You need to use that. And it took a while for me to get the memo, as it often does, but at a certain point I was like, all right, I'm in. And I made that commitment to really awaken my intuition. And it happened really, really fast. And what I realized was I'd been using this my whole life. The things that I was rewarded for in college and high school, and even to some degree, graduate school, I was a natural channel. Like that's where it was coming from. And I gave credit to my intellect, but my intellect was really never part of the party. It was always this higher guidance. And when I recognized that, then everything kind of came together, and I've moved forward, and I've never looked back. So
that's really interesting. I have had many guests tell me when they were young children, they have that natural intuition. They can see angelic beings or other things, and they don't know it's not normal.
For sure.
And nobody has told them until it gets kicked out of them as they get older. But so you had that, and you mentioned channeling. Do you channel? Did you channel? Different entities and beings and energies?
So first of all, I think that we're all intuitive. We're all psychic. We're all channels. So we all have this ability, and we're using it all the time to varying degrees. But what happens is early on, as you alluded to, right? As a child, we come in remembering and fully connected with all of our spiritual gifts. But as we enter into the human world, up until now, the people in our world often will say, the child will come to their mom or dad and they'll say, I know something. And the parent will be like, no, you don't. How do you know that? You can't know that. This is the way you're allowed to know things. And so we shut it down. Right. But we all have it and we all use it. It's just a lot of times I say the mind takes credit. The mind comes in and says, no, I did that, because we've been taught, right, to rationalize a lot of the real gold that comes through us. And we have to explain how we got there. And that kind of sometimes dilutes the message, sometimes not. But at the very least, it takes us out of the trust in our own knowing, our own truth, our own power, and our own intuition. So I wanted to start with that. And then I'll tell you a little bit about how it feels to me in my process, because it's different for everyone. So I am a conscious channel. So I receive and communicate with spirit guides, spirits, and information definitely comes through me in many different ways. I am not and choose not to be an unconscious channel. So a lot of people think about channeling as, I tune out and something speaks through my lips. That happens ever so occasionally. Something will come out of my mouth and I'm like, oh yeah, those weren't my words. But just as a preference for reasons I don't need to share on the show, I prefer to be a participant, a fully conscious participant in the work that I'm doing. And I've been told again, for me by my guides, that that's exactly how it should be, because as a soul who came down to play at being Victoria Shaw, I also have wisdom and things that, my spirit, my soul, my higher self wants to share, and I'm a participant. And I also think the guides are prompting me to say too, that we're all participants in our own lives and what we're doing. Your human self is really important. It's what you came here to do. And so for me, a lot of the teaching that I do, it's not about like not being human. It's about how do we like get the most out of this human experience and let our human selves and our higher selves play together in a more seamless and beautiful and synchronistic way. So that's sort of what I teach. Did I answer your questions in there?
Oh, and more.
Okay.
I do find it interesting that you, like myself, grew up with no religion in our young life. My family didn't go to church. We never spoke about God, and in hindsight, I always look back and I think it was a blessing for me because it allowed me to have a blank slate. And so when I went into adulthood, I was able to, as I learned things, pick things that seemed to gravitate to me too. And it's helped me to be, truly in the spiritual sense. And I love every moment of it. But, yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I have had a number of trance channels on here, but yeah, you're exactly right. You don't have to be a trance channel, which is where they literally go unconscious and an entity speaks through them, and they have to watch the video later to see what actually was said. But
Yeah.
if that wisdom can come through you and you remember it, God bless you.
Yeah. There's just different ways to flow, and that's just my preference. But it's all good. And there are times too when I know that I'm getting. So the way that when I was in high school and college, I would have this experience when I was in philosophy class or in a class, and I was lucky to go to a very alternative school. So I really did get to push the limits and explore all sorts of exciting things when I was in high school that probably most high schoolers don't have the opportunity to ask. So I was really blessed. But I would have this experience, right, of going to the place beyond words. That's how it felt to me. And then I would get the information, right? I would kind of ask the question, get the information, feel into it, and then I would bring it back and translate it. And it wasn't until decades later that I was like, oh, that's what channeling is, right? That's basically what we're doing. So a lot of my work is that it's tuning in to those higher channels, getting the answer. It comes through my verbal apparatus. But it's coming from somewhere else. And then sometimes too, the guides will give me very specific words. That's happening more now, but it's always happened. And I think that's a lot of times, sometimes it's because the precision of the words is important, that there's a certain way they want to get it through. But I think other times it's just reassurance to me that what I'm doing is really coming from them, from source, from higher self. And so oftentimes when they give me words, they're like, it sounds like someone who who has a lot of very big words in their vocabulary. And, it's like they're words that I would never use, and they're put together in ways that I would never put them together. And I think that sometimes too, that can be very validating to me, because I'm like, yeah, definitely that didn't come from my mind. So.
I like what you said, verbal apparatus. Now, when I do the intro to my show, instead of saying I'm the host, I'm your verbal apparatus.
Yeah, yeah.
It's true. Yeah,
yeah. I tell my clients, like, before their first session, anyone who does a session with me, the first time, I always say, I am the conduit or channel for your answers, for your higher guidance. It comes out of these vocal cords, right? But it's just to awaken a knowing in you. So yeah, that's how I see it. Like I'm just the apparatus for, and I have opinions, and I've, learned things from working with my clients, from talking to my guides, from living in this body and others. And I'll share those things for sure. But I always trust that, like, when I'm in the flow, whatever I'm sharing is still part of, what I'm guided to do.
Yeah. I have a question about this. You had this change in your life too. Does a person have to get some form of disaster or crisis in their life in order to have some form of spiritual and enlightening awakening? Do they have
1,000% now? And for me, it wasn't. And for me, it wasn't a crisis. Like, here's the truth of it. I love that you asked that question, Carl, because the truth of this is I've done hundreds of these podcasts, and everybody wants to know, like, what was the inciting incident? What was the thing? And a lot of times too, and I stay away from these podcasts for the most part, because it's just not the way. As a law of attraction teacher, I like to, understand and explain the world. But some people really want to just talk about what went terribly wrong, that helped you get where you're at. And it's more a matter of what started to go terribly right. That's what it was. It was those moments when I was like, I'm ready to listen. And as soon as I was ready to listen, boom, there was so much to hear. And so, yeah, life can get lifey sometimes, and we can have crisis and struggle. And I do think the model of growth for many human beings up until now, because this is shifting and changing. It is no longer a necessity, but it has been, there's been a lot of interesting stuff that can come from contrast and suffering. And so I think that, that has been the modus operandi for many people on earth up until now, to grow the hard way. It's not necessary. It's not what we need to do. There are better ways to do it. When I teach intuitive development, I don't say, like, let's break down your life so you can find your intuition. Who would take that class? Right? It is one way. Eckhart Tolle, right? Famous spiritual teacher, ready to kill himself, right? And then suddenly he had so much overwhelming mental anguish that, he couldn't take it anymore. And boom, it all fell away and he found peace, right? So that is definitely one way that we can do it, but it's not the fun way. And if you follow Eckhart Tolle's teachings, he is not teaching you to do that, right? It can happen, but it's not the primary way. So for me, my life was like many human beings living in varying degrees of illusion. Like, my life was drama filled and difficult. And because my mind and the way that I had been taught to relate to it made it so. And over time, I've learned how to make it easier by trusting more in my inner wisdom, by trusting more in the process of life, by trusting more in myself, by listening more to my guides, and also recognizing that when life gets lifey, I have the tools to deal with it. It's not a necessity. But when it happens, I roll with that too, because it's all part of this beautiful human experience that I have this amazing opportunity to have. So I'm going to embrace it.
You have these great lines, when life gets lifey. But, I wrote a book a couple years ago called True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. And I have a chapter in there titled Catharsis or Catastrophe. Is it necessary?
Yes.
So that topic was on my mind, and I was looking at myself, and I go, do I have to have something like that? And I have followed, as I've spiritually studied and awakened. It's like a slow blossoming and awakening to the truth and the beauty and the light and the love. And boy, what a great path to follow. I honestly believe you don't have to have a catharsis. You don't have to have a catastrophe to awaken.
Yeah. And, at the moment when I had this experience, right, or started on this journey, I had two beautiful children. I was happily married. We had really, started in New York City, but that I had just gotten my dream house in Connecticut. A lot of things were going right. And I wasn't miserable either. I just knew it could be better. I just knew it could be better. And I wanted to be the best I could be. And that's really what was driving the process. And my guides are also prompting me to say, because so many people have this experience now, I had this deep sense, right, that of calling, that there was something I was supposed to be doing and that I wasn't doing. And I knew being a mom was a huge part of my journey, and it was. But I had the sense that there were other things that I was being called to do as well. And I had felt that deep sense of purpose all the way to the end of my PhD. And then, got a little bit like, oh, nope, this isn't it. But it started to wake up again and call to me. And so, when we listen and we follow that calling, I mean, I think that was really the biggest piece that led to me opening, my intuition and strengthening that connection and doing the work that I do today.
And with all that being said, I've got to ask this: have you ever had a particularly very memorable spiritual awakening or a Kundalini awakening? I mean, you may not have, but have you?
So I often joke that I've lived about, I think we're up to 32 lifetimes in this body because
Wow.
I've just been on a growth path. And, I think that people that knew me, even 10 years ago, I mean, there's a little more consistency there, but definitely people that knew me as a child or knew me in my 20s. I don't know that those people would really understand me now, right? There's just been so many profound shifts in the way that I understand myself in the world throughout my lifetime. And I'm really blessed to have those. And some of them have been really profound, but I wouldn't say they're these big, like I woke up one morning and, I saw the key to the universe. There are a lot of kind of microscopic moments, throughout my life, throughout my day, a lot of these moments, but a lot of them are very, very subtle and very, very profound. So for me, I think my awakening process has really been informed by being in it and living my life to the fullest, meaning not, doing the stuff and getting the things, though I like doing stuff and getting things, but more about, just deepening my presence in that human experience more and more and more and more. And as that presence, and as your consciousness expands, it changes the way that you view and react to every aspect in life. And so that's how my experience has been. I haven't had like kind of an aberration experience where I, took mushrooms and saw, the codes of the universe or anything like that. It's been more about living the life that I live with increasing amounts of consciousness and awareness.
Well, it's nice to hear that you can do that without plant medicines. I've had a lot of guests on here who've done ayahuasca and mushrooms and all that, but they have their own merits. But let's go back to what I see. You're a self-described intuitive counselor. And let's dive into this. Can you explain what intuition really is, and how can one consistently tap into it?
1,000%. And, intuition has become kind of a catch all phrase now for like psychic ability and channel. Like it's all kind of thrown in there. And I think it can be all of those things. But the way that I really like to, but psychic ability and channeling can also be, we all have six sensory abilities. And we can use them in different ways. And for me, intuition is really the voice of your soul. It's really the voice of your soul, your higher self, source, God, whatever you want to think about it. And we all have it because we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And what happens is when we come into this human world, we've made an agreement to very quickly forget everything that we knew when we signed on. And but there's a part of you that remembers. There's a part of you that knows, is still connected to your purpose, your intention for being here, everything that you've done in every bodies and other points of focus. That's your higher self, your soul, or even again, you could say source. And so that's the part that you're tapping into with your intuition. It's always informing you, it's always guiding you, it's always leading you. And it's just a matter of tuning into that channel more and more and listening and following. And, sometimes Intuition comes in the form of really profound psychic experiences. And sometimes it's really quiet and really subtle, like a feeling in your body or just a deep knowing that I should do this and not that. And, I think sometimes with some of and we all have it to varying degrees. I think for some of us, it's just really loud and never turned down, and, I'm one of those people. But everybody has it. Everyone is following it. And it's just the work that I do is to teach you to use that lens and use that guidance more and more, because that's where all the gold is. That's where all the gold is. I promise you. Any great scientific discoveries, any great musical creations, any great decisions that you've ever made in your life that have changed your life, all of those things were guided by your intuition. And your mind might have come in and told you a story about how it saved the day. But I've also studied the mind pretty hard at Princeton and Columbia, and I'll tell you from that experience and also the work that I have done since then, that is not what your mind is designed to do, but that is exactly what your intuition, spirit, and soul is here to do for you.
So you may have touched on this already, but I think for me, sometimes it's difficult to tell if it's my higher self intuition or the ego monkey mind chattering away. How can I tell which is which?
Yeah. I mean, that's the perennial question. That's, and it's discernment, and it's about continually asking, continually being present, and allowing yourself sometimes not to know. You don't have to get it 100% right. Like I said, I do these sessions. Today I was walking with a friend and she said her neck hurt. And I was like, I'm like, it's this, it's this, it's this. And then it's coming from your left hip. She's like, how did you know my left hip hurts? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like sometimes it amazes me how this stuff works. But anyway, back to your question. And so, but there are ways to discern. And so the first thing I would say is the voice of your soul, your intuition, your higher self is always loving. Okay. It's always loving. It may not always tell you what you want to know or what you want to hear, right? Because sometimes love is telling us, how it is, but it's always loving. So if the voice in your head is beating you up, if the voice in your head, I always say, if it's unkind, it's your mind. Okay. If it's unkind, it's your mind. Your spirit guides, they're not mad at you. They don't think you're stupid. Your higher self thinks you're awesome no matter what you do. It comes from a place without judgment, a place of pure unconditional love, right? So if the message doesn't feel loving, it is coming from your mind. That is 100%. And then I would also say, oftentimes the voice of your intuition, it's very subtle. It's very quiet. The mind is very loud. It likes to get our attention. It likes to go, yeah. But the voice of your soul is often very quiet. It's very calm. It's very peaceful. It's not fear-based. Sometimes you'll get an intuitive hit of something that your ego doesn't like. And so you may get an egoic reaction of fear that happens after that. But the initial hit is always emotionally neutral, because again, emotions are human things. Feelings, that to me is more akin to your intuition, but emotions, Eckhart Tolle always says that's your body's reaction to your mind. And that checks with me. And so that emotional charge does not come from your intuition. The other thing I think a way to tell sometimes for me is my intuition is really surprising. Right? When something comes through, I'll be like, I could never have thought about that. Sometimes it's something I don't even know. Like what I told my friend today. I was describing the inner workings of her body, but I was like, I don't know exactly what I'm seeing. This is what it looks like, but I still don't know what I told her. I said, go tell your chiropractor what I said. And she can decipher what it means. Right. And so, oftentimes too, the mind wants to know, figure it all out, have the complete answer. But oftentimes our intuition speaks in code. It gives us just as much as we can process and understand in the moment now. Right. And so that's the other thing. It's not always a complete sentence. Sometimes it's just these little breadcrumbs, and you learn to trust and you learn to follow them. So those are just some of the ways that you can tell the difference. And then the other thing that really helps is, to start to reflect backwards on, things that you thought were your intuition. You can journal, or you can just be curious, because then you'll start to kind of know the code. Like, how does my intuition speak to me? It's different for everyone. What does it feel like internally? So for years, when I would go to psychics or healers, and I still have this ability. Like I can often tell the moment that they veer from being a channel to going back into their ego. And we all do it all the time, including yours truly. And I think I'm awesome and really good at this, but I'm also very human, right? And so we're all going in and out. But sometimes I would work with someone and it would be like clear, clear, clear. And then the energy would shift and ego had taken over. Right. And we can also start to do that within ourselves. And because there's a very different feeling, at least if you're, I'm very kinesthetically aware, but it feels different to me. Like intuition just feels different in my body than mind. Right. Sometimes I can see it in people's eyes when their eyes start to cloud over, is how it looks to me, right? When they're going a little more into their mind. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with again, it's a beautiful dance between our human selves and our higher selves. And we get to be both. That is the beauty of this human experience, right? It's just a matter of doing it more and more in alignment. But I totally went off on a tangent. So I think I lost your original question. I'm so sorry.
No, you did great.
But sometimes there's that felt sense that can help us know as well. That's
Well,
I think what
a
I was
couple
going
of
for.
things that you said go right in alignment with my studies of A Course in Miracles, which have helped me. So you're exactly right. The ego will always speak the loudest and the harshest, and it'll speak first. And then your higher self is generally very gently and quiet and loving. And another thing that I learned from my studies of the Course is that when you're trying to decide if it's your ego mind or your higher intuition, your higher self, ask yourself, what is this for? What do I want to come from this? And if it is leading in a direction that's not peaceful and loving and that type of thing, then you know which, if it's coming from that ego mind or the intuition.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think, and you can use your psychic abilities for everything, anything, and people do. We're all multisensory beings. There's plenty of people that tap into psychic abilities for all sorts of egoic ends. And, even talking about it doesn't feel good to me because that's not the road that I want to be on, but it's okay. But I love that question because it keeps us aligned with the higher self, with the higher, and the higher can be, if you're feeling, wow, I want to make a bigger impact on the world and I want more people to hear my voice, that's okay. If you're like, hey, I would really love to be able to buy more really soft green sweaters, I would love to experience more, monetary abundance in our life, that's okay. There's no wrong road. But when we do it from that place of soul and we listen, we're going to get the answers, the responses, the guidance that's going to satisfy us the most deeply and keep us more aligned with our higher selves, both for ourselves but also for others.
Yeah, that's really well said. Thank you for that. You talk about spiritual psychology. How do
Yes.
those two topics intersect?
Well, originally psychology comes from psyche and spirit. So originally psychology was the spiritual realm. And I do feel the way that it's practiced more and more now, even in like clinical psychology, right? So the psychology of like therapy, more and more spirituality is making a comeback in that realm. We have things like internal family systems, which is a very spiritually guided dialectical behavioral therapy, which is, used in every hospital, mental health, facility across the globe at this point. The person who founded it was a Buddhist monk. And again, she didn't lead with that, but that's the truth. And so spirituality is definitely making a comeback in psychology in general. But for me, when I think about being a spiritual psychologist, and I don't use that term a lot, but it's really about it's about the longing that I had when I left my career as an academic psychologist. Because what happened was I had these big questions like, what is consciousness, and what's the relationship between the mind and the body, and and I didn't know that I was missing spirit because I just wasn't brought up with it. So I didn't know I could ask that. But when I look back, what I was looking for was that spiritual connection, and it's really hard to do psychology if the S word is not included because we are mind, body, spiritual beings. The spirit is really going to be very important for how we understand everything in this world. And science is starting to filter back in this idea of spirituality, right? Like quantum physics and those areas are pointing us home to that. And I think it will happen in psychology as well. And so for me, a spiritual psychology is just recognizing us as mind, body, spiritual beings and letting that spirituality and that spiritual connection come back in and, accounting for that in the way that we understand, our perspective, our consciousness, and how we interface with the world. And then on a more practical level, the way that I see the work that I do as an intuitive counselor and spiritual guide is to help people live their lives more in alignment with their higher selves. Right. So understanding that broader context that brought you here to this human world, right? So that you're navigating whatever's happening, be it a challenge, a struggle, or even just, a series of like, my business is going great and I want it to go better. But doing that more and more from that higher spiritual lens, right? Connecting to your intuition, connecting to your inner guidance and understanding life from that broader lens, if that makes sense.
I like how you refer to spirituality as the S word.
S word. Right. But it was like, nobody would, in 1994, when I graduated from Princeton, like that, my advisor was actually a pretty intuitive guy. And he was, I think, pretty interested in where, inspiration, intuition came from. I think that was he was a musician as well. And he was studying musical creativity. And although, his claim to fame was studying syllogisms and logic, like he was a pretty cool dude. But, like I can't imagine having a lab meeting where we talked about where does spirit fit into all of this. It was just like people would have thought I had 7 heads if I wanted to open that conversation at that time.
Oh my gosh. I have had a number of psychotherapists on here, and they're all going into the S word, into the spiritual.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's evidence-based now because, there's a lot of evidence a lot of research that shows that people that have any kind of spiritual practice or spiritual connection have higher reported levels of well-being. Right. So it's a good thing. I was recently, I had a guest on how do I frame this? I was recently invited to speak to a lab at Yale, at the medical school at Yale, all about intuition. And, to me, that was like a come home moment. And my friend, Anna Yusim, who was a guest on my podcast, and she's a intuitive psychiatrist, and she is working on founding a center for spirituality and mental health at Yale. So it's happening. It's happening everywhere. And, I got an email blast. Daryl Anka, who's a very, very well-known channel, was like speaking at MIT. So I really think this is the way of the future. I think we're finally there, but, back in 1994, not so much.
Well, one topic I really would like to talk to you about, because you and I are both teachers and purveyors of the law of attraction. Now, yes. One thing about, especially over the last 20 years, the law of attraction exploded and became really popular. And many people think it's passé and they poo-poo it. But honestly, I mean, it's been called the most powerful law in the universe, that which you think and dwell upon consistently is sent to you, be it good or bad. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because you do work and teach the law of attraction.
1,000%. And the law of attraction was one of the last teachings to kind of hit home for me. I knew about it. The first time I was like an energy healer. This was early in my journey, and she told me to like get The Secret, and I got like the DVD, and I just like threw it against the wall because I was like, this is just going to give me OCD. Like, I was like, I got to worry about everything that I think about. And so I put that away for a really long time. That scared the pants off of me. But it's actually when you really understand it and feel it and forgive yourself for being human and understand, of course, that everything you think will not instantly manifest. That's not how it works. So relax out there, if that's your interpretation. But I'm sure your listeners have a more nuanced understanding than I did back then. But no, it's the fundamental law of the universe, and understanding it more and more has been, and embracing it more and more has been absolutely so impactful in changing every aspect of my life. And now it is integral to all the work that I do and all the teaching that I do, because it's one of the most empowering things that we can understand. And it also helps us again to have that soul-based lens and really understand how we're creating our lives and how to work with that. And I think, like any spiritual teaching, you put it out there and then, it gets confused a little bit because, humans be humans, and we're figuring things out as we go along. And so there's a lot of confusions on the law of attraction. And there's a lot of, just like the one that I just shared. And there's a lot of people too that try to use it to micromanage or control their lives, because the ego really wants to control the life, because for some reason, the ego thinks if I control everything, I'll be safe. And even saying that makes my energy feel a little uncomfortable. What I've learned is if I surrender and let go and go with the flow and use my intuition and my guidance to co-create with my higher self in the universe, I feel awesome. Right. But that's a very different thing than trying to control with the mind. And I think a lot of times people try to use the law of attraction that way. And it can work to varying degrees. It's a lot less fun, or they misunderstand various aspects of it. Like everything I think will manifest, or if bad things happen to me, it must be my fault. And my friend, sending you a ton of love. None of those things are true. It's just like gravity. When you understand gravity, it helps you build airplanes, right? When you understand the law of attraction, it deepens your understanding of life and the way that you dance with it.
I've never seen any difference in how the law of attraction works, and spiritual teachings have always said it that that which you give, you receive back.
1,000%.
Yeah. And that is just like the law of attraction. That which you think and dwell upon consistently is given back to you.
And that is karma right there, what you said. We think of karma as punishment, or, but a lot of it is simply like, you put it out there and now it's coming back, and it can come back at many different times, and it's not bad. It's just how life works. And everything that happens in life is an opportunity, everything. So you're never doing it wrong. You're always doing it right. And teaching in the law of attraction and everything that I do is just how to do it more joyously. That's all. It's not, like, you're never going to get it 100% right, because that's, Earth is a wonky place and it's supposed to be. That's the fun. Right. And when what's right, and the guides are like, and what's right anyway, that's a very human construct. This idea that one thing is right and one thing is wrong. That is not how your higher self views the situation.
I find your reaction to Rhonda Byrne's movie The Secret that came out in 2006 interesting. But in that movie, they actually make it clear that you're not going to instantaneously get. I think there was a scene in there where
I'd already thrown the DVD against the wall, Carl. So I didn't get through the whole thing.
There was a scene where the guy was thinking about an elephant, and then blam, all of a sudden there was an elephant in his living room, and he's cleaning up elephant poop. And they just wanted to make sure that you understand that it wasn't instantaneously. However, I know that Abraham, channeled by Esther Hicks, speaks about that as little as 16 seconds of dwelling consistently on a thought. Some form on some level in some dimension happens, and then at 67 seconds, then it starts being attracted to you. But it's still you don't have to be worried. It's if you're consistently doing it over and over, day after day after day after day.
Yeah. And it's not a one-to-one correspondence between every thought. And if it's an intrusive thought and you don't really believe it, but it's harassing you, that, like that one might not manifest, because, it's about deeper. It's about what you believe. And a lot of times too, people aren't even aware of what they're thinking. They're not even aware if there's a constant mental chatter. A lot of times I'll be doing a reading with somebody and something will come out of their mouth and I'll be like, did you hear what you said? And they don't. They're like, no, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so they're sharing their limiting beliefs with me out of their lips, but we don't hear it. It's sort of like you become tone deaf, right? Or, years ago in intro psychology, I learned that if we don't smell our own body odor. So just know if people are standing back from you a little bit, you're not smelling it, they are. But it's the same because we become habituated to it. But sorry for that. But it's the same thing with our thoughts. Like you just take it for granted. You're habituated to that. And, so a lot of times we don't even know what we're thinking. And so I think a lot of the process of working with the law of attraction and also just feeling better in life is becoming increasingly aware of these patterns so we can question them. And we can say like, oh, you know what? That doesn't make me feel good. That doesn't make me feel good. And for me, if a thought doesn't make me feel good, then you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really have a place in my life.
So I'm curious. I know that you work one-on-one with people. What are some of the most common issues that people come to you with that they need help with?
Yeah, I love that question because it's like literally anything. Um, I do a lot of work with parents. That's been a long-standing thing with me, the parent-child relationship, because that was a big learning and growth for me, and it's helpful too because I can help parents to come more present as themselves to parenting, but also understand their kids better because a lot of times too, each soul has their own reason for being here. And as parents, when we can support our children on their unique journey, rather than having it be like overly intertwined with ours, that can be really helpful. So that's one thing that I do a lot of. I have a lot of people that are asking that question, like, what next? I know there's something else I'm supposed to be doing. What is it? And helping them kind of decode that and feel into that. I always say the first thing when you're looking for your purpose, you're living it already, right? Being in your life is your purpose here. Being human is the first and necessary and sufficient step. But oftentimes when we hear that call and we start wanting to live more purposefully, right, we're asking to connect more with our higher self and soul. And I can help you to do that. I work with a lot of people going through life transitions. I'm a medium. So I work with people going through grief and loss, who want to connect with their loved ones. I have a lot of clients that come to me for business guidance, you know, so just nuts and bolts, right? Should I hire this person? Should I fire this person? Should I take this contract or that contract? And again, there's no should in it. Because again, on the other side, there's no right or wrong answers here. It's just really a matter of what feels more aligned. And I want to say this because it's really important. What intuition will always give you is what's the next best step. What's true for you? What's the most aligned choice in the now. And the now is a moving relative to whatever you're asking in the now. And the now is a moving target, right? And so it's important to know that because sometimes we ask our intuition to give me the path between now and the rest of my life. And, it will continue to change in each moment because, as you know, now, it's over pretty fast. So I hope that makes sense.
Well, and you just mentioned that you're a medium. How did you realize that you can communicate with beings on the other side of the veil?
It's the same. It's the same. Connecting with spirit guides for me and connecting with loved ones. It's the same channel, the same conduit. And again, we're all doing it to some extent or some degree. For me, it's just really, really open and natural. And I wasn't trained as an evidential medium. That's not something that I aspire to do. I'm not about convincing people, that there's an afterlife, though I love the people that are tasked with doing that and they do it really well. For me, most people come to me, they already believe I'm a medium and they already believe this stuff works. And a lot of times the loved ones will come through as part of someone's healing journey, right? Because a lot of times when our loved ones cross over, they start to recognize all of the ways in which, they might have accidentally tread on us in ways that didn't feel good. And they want to help us work through that, right? They got the memo, they see it now, and they want to help us make peace with, areas in which they may have inadvertently misstepped. And so a lot of times they'll come through for that reason. Sometimes too, they just come through because they have wisdom or guidance. They want to support us. They want to help us. They love us. Oftentimes your loved ones are not your spirit guides, but they can function that way sometimes. So when I first started doing this work, I didn't call myself a medium because I was kind of afraid of like people coming and I didn't have the training and when I get like a name or, but now I just flow freely with it. And usually I can always get something because I can always connect with someone's higher self, and I can do that for the living as well. And and so the higher self is the part of you that is always in spirit form, and that's always accessible. And so I can do that as well. But oftentimes, loved ones, they just they show up spontaneously because they love us and they want to help.
Gosh, maybe a couple years ago, I had Barbara Edwards on here, who is a medium. But there's different levels of it. I mean, she's evidently very intense. She says that time she'll go to bed at night and 20 souls will come around her bed because they're so anxious to communicate with her loved ones. She has to say, nope, wait until the morning. Go back.
Boundaries. Suzanne Wilson, who's the carefree medium who is on my podcast, and I was on hers. She's lovely. When she had her awakening, she talks about coming out of the shower and spirit handing her the towel. And if you've talked to her, and I know her well, she's pretty grounded in the 3D. She's like, she's a very mentally well woman. But her experiences are very intense and very profound. My experience is not like that at all by choice. I turn it on, I turn it off. And I'm always in contact with my guides, and that's fine. But if I go to the grocery store, spirits do not line up to talk to me because I do not have my vacancy sign on.
I like that. Well, we are talking to the amazing Victoria Shaw. This is incredible talk we're having here. We've got a few minutes left here. I do want to ask you this as a spiritual and intuitive counselor. Considering all the crazy, chaotic, and insane things that appear to be going on in the world, what is your best advice to someone who's just trying to live a happy, normal, and peaceful life right now here in 2026?
Well, the answer came through before you finished the question. Love yourself. Love yourself. This journey is about deepening our own self-love, not in a narcissistic way, but in a self-acceptance way. Love yourself. Look for opportunities to honor yourself, to love yourself. And in so doing, you'll love others as well. And, we are in such divisive times. And that divisiveness often comes from where someone else's vessel of self-love is broken or not working well. And so we project that onto others. And that is where this illusion of hate comes from and all the divisions. And so I would say, love yourself, honor yourself, be true to yourself, and then allow others to do that too. Even if you don't agree with them, even if you think they're the enemy, that act of self-love is so powerful. And then remember too, because we've been talking a little bit about the law of attraction, what we focus on grows. So please, for the love of God, focus on the world you want to see, right? Rather than rehashing everything that you think is wrong. And there's a lot out there that hurts my heart. And I take time to feel that and process that. I don't marinate on it. I don't seek it out, but it's hard sometimes to avoid, right? And in those moments when something doesn't feel right to me, I send love, I tune in, I say, I ask my higher self and guides, is there anything that, will help me be of service right now? And usually it is just to tap into that well of unconditional love. Remember, that's what I'm made of. That's what we're all made of, and realign with that so that, I can help bring more and more of that into the world. And that energy, that rivers, that flows, that will heal everything.
Ah, yes, wise advice of the ages. I love all of it. So we've got a wind up here, and I'm sorry we didn't really touch. You've got 4 books too, and they're mainly geared towards kids. What people can just find them on Amazon?
Yeah, they're old. They're old. That was the first thing that I did when I left academia, as I wrote some books. So I am back to that's what I'm going to do after this. I am back to writing. Stay tuned. Something amazing came through for me last year, and I'm in the process of turning it into something that you can read. But mostly my platform is the podcast, Intuitive Connection. And that's where you'll see all my musings and all my teachings. And we have almost 300 episodes. So.
Oh, wow. I'm catching up to you. This is great.
Yeah. So, and you can watch my journey too, because we're almost at 6 years. So like you, it's been, I look back in those early episodes and I love each and every one, but if you're going to binge, you're going to see there's been a lot of development, a lot of change.
Yeah, same here. But I will put those links in the show notes. What is your website and the best way for people to connect with you?
So my website is Victoria Shaw. That's SHAW, VictoriaShawintuitive.com. And then you'll see links to the podcast. You'll see links to my television show, Living in Alignment, on Soul Search TV. We have 2 seasons of that. You'll see how to work with me if you want to work with me. I have a couple self-paced classes that you can buy, and I have a free ebook on activating your intuition that you can download.
Oh, that's right. I downloaded that earlier. I've got to read that tonight.
Yay.
So, yeah, very cool. Well, you're not bored, are you?
No, I keep plenty busy.
All right, Victoria, this has been just a beautiful conversation. I love what you're doing for the world. Thank you. You're doing beautiful work.
Oh, thank you. This was a really fun conversation, Carl. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.